and it will really help just to hide any problems you may have once you start reusing the asset, tiling the asset around. Okay, we have those 3 pieces in. I'm just going to actually check to see if I did export the normal map for that asset or not. If not, we can do it really quickly in Knald, which is KNALD. I use it quite a lot because it's a great piece of software. No, it doesn't look like it. I have the texture map, but not the normal map. I'll let Knald load up in the background while I'm looking at our Unreal level. So yeah, we're going to be using that square tile all the way around the top of the ceiling, and we're going to be using the rectangular plane piece for the middle, and that's for our light fittings. Okay, let's have a look here. Is Knald opened up? Alright, let's toggle the 3D viewport, and let's pull in our color map. Again, this is a great piece of software. You do have to buy it, but it's reasonably priced. I know that Sniper Echo purchased it for his work. It's that's Knald, KNALD, of course. I believe it's made by the guys at E3D. I think they make it. I could be wrong, but I think they do. And it's really useful. The bitmap to material, which is what Algorithmic make, that's useful too, but I prefer Knald. I'm just going to pull in the color map that we're using for that tile, which is this one here. And I don't really like seeing it on the default geometry that they have, so I'm going to load in the actual mesh. This is the other reason I really like using Knald, because I can load the mesh up that texture is actually going to be applied to see what it's going to look like. And I can make my adjustments to my normal map looking at the actual mesh that it's being applied to. So let's start by setting our path to the correct spot so that when we do our export, it's not going to be all messed up. We'll know where to find it, put it that way. Okay. And now I'm going to start adjusting my normals here. And they give you a lot of control over how your normal map is going to look, from extra large all the way to extra fine detail. You can adjust it all individually. I usually don't pull up too much on the large or extra large detail. We'll start pulling up a bit more on the medium, a little bit more on the fine, and then a little bit more again then on the extra fine. So I sort of go up in a stair-step pattern like that. And then we have an overall adjustment as to how little or how much we want as well. Now I'm thinking I may use some parallax mapping on this. I'll see if it'll work inside of Unreal or not. Parallax mapping, that is. So we'll save out a height map just in case we decide we do want to use parallax mapping. Okay, that should work. Let's update the integrator, which will then render out the height map and the ambient occlusion. So we have our height map and our ambient occlusion map. All adjustable, of course, after the fact inside the program if you want to make any adjustments on it, but I think they look okay. I'm not going to be using a concavity or convexity or transmission as black anyway. They do a curvature map as well, in case you wanted to bring it into Substance Painter. But we're only going to be looking at the, we're going to be exporting a height map, a normal map, the ambient occlusion. I'm not going to export the convexity. And I'm saving as PNG, so let's export those. Let's do that for the other texture map as well, which is the square section, the rectangular section, my apology. And again, I'm just going to load up the mesh to make sure. I think leaving the same settings we had here for our last piece is the best way to go to get consistency between the two pieces of geometry. We're saving it into the same path, but let's update the integrator again and just check out our height map and our ambient occlusion. That's fine. And we can export. I don't think we'll need null, but I'll leave it open just in case. Jump back into Unreal. Now, I put all my meshes in their own folders. It just keeps everything nice and organized here. And I am going to be putting these meshes inside of this general building folder, but just for ease of using it, I'm going to actually place it into the effects folder. Hey Sniper Echo, good to see you. How's things, buddy? I'm waiting to hear that news that you posted about on your Twitter account yesterday. You were saying that you may have some news about some stuff, which is cool, very cool. I'm going to import that those ceiling pieces. Let's start with the square piece, I think. There. Good to hear. You can't say a lot at the moment, but it looks good so far. Good to hear. I'm doing really well, buddy. How are you? I wish you all the best of luck. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. You can't talk about some things before before you know. And so it's always like a nerve-wracking time too, waiting to hear about these sort of things too. But I'm doing really well, very tired. I've got a lot of work on, like you guys know, at the studio. They're really working me ragged. So I've been pulling, 2 a.m. All day till 2 a.m. most weeks now. I'm going to need a holiday. You guys remember last year I took, I think it was a week off, where I went to the mountains to a cabin in the woods, and no technology, no phone, no TV, no electricity, but no technology, just to sort of recoup. I like to do that because working in design can be very tiring, and you can burn out very quickly unless you take some time away. So whenever I find that I'm getting a bit overloaded, I take time off work and just go into a cabin in the woods for a week and chill out. Do some hiking and that sort of thing. I also like to take photographs. Remember, textures, always textures. I don't take my phone, I take my camera. And I don't take my phone simply because I don't want to be interrupted. But I certainly do take my camera and take some photos while I'm away. That's the only sort of work-related thing I do when I'm away. So I think it might be time for me to do another one of my sojourns into the mountains, into a cabin in the woods in the mountains. It's just this time of year in design, end of financial year, beginning of financial year, is always incredibly busy. Let's we've got a couple of options here. We can see whether a parallax map is going to work for that asset. Let's start there. Let's see if we can use a parallax map. It doesn't work for everything. You guys know I am using parallax mapping for the ceiling that we're using down here. These ceiling pieces here are parallax mapped. If I can get into a position where we can see them a bit better. They're just a flat plane, and it's all faked in parallax mapping the depth. We can see if we can use it for the other. You do get this problem though if you get close to it, where it's going to mess the parallax up. We'll see if we can do that for this ceiling in here. And I think the easiest way to do that's going to be to go into my materials and find the parallax map I set up for the other ceiling. It is here. I know it is. I don't think it's this one. I will just check this. No, it's not that one. It will have the word parallax in it. So if you guys spot anything here that says parallax, that's the one I want. It's very odd. I didn't put it there. Where would I put it? No. I even separate out my materials into subfolders. Again, the idea is to try and make it easier for me to find stuff. I'm sure it's in the building folder. It should be here. I must have missed it. No, I know that says Deco ceiling, but that's not the one I want. I must have moved it somewhere else. Where would I have moved it to? I know an easy way to find it. Let's go into the models. I should have done this before. Much quicker and easier. Let's go to the asset that we're using it on, which will be this one here. Parallax map. Let's go and open that up. Alright. I'm just looking through here to see how I've done this again, because it was a while ago. It's one of the first things I brought in when we started making our level. We have our height map there. You know, you can search the contemporary. Yeah, I do know that, but I wasn't sure exactly what I called the material, so doing a search in the content browser wasn't going to really help me much. You posted a link? Okay, let me have a look. Alright, let me check this out. I'm just going to take a sec here and open up my browser. I have two browsers, one that you guys don't see off stream, and then this one that is on stream. And the other one is my default. When somebody posts a link, it opens the other one automatically. Okay, so you're talking about you're having a problem here with transparency on this glass piece inside your door, yeah? Is that what you're saying? Can you? I'm trying to find out exactly what the problem is you're having. Are you talking about this? I can see there's something going on here around the edge of the door frame compared to maybe this one where it's darker. Yes, okay. So basically what you've done here is, I'm assuming you assigned your texture and you're having this problem here around the edge of the door. Now, because you're using the one texture with transparency, my immediate presumption would be that there's a problem with your alpha map. Basically, it looks like instead of just having an alpha map for the middle of the door, somehow it's bleeding into the edges here. Because I notice when you make the texture darker, it darkens back up again. That's my first train of thought here, is that your alpha map, you may have a problem with your alpha map. Yeah, that's what it looks like to me. I can't see why adding transparency to a texture would cause that unless it's somehow bleeding in with the alpha. And again, I don't do it this way. This is a good way to do it. There's many different ways to do everything, and the way I show you guys is my way. I don't say it's the best way. I don't say it's the only way. I'm just telling you it's my way that served me well over the years that I've worked in 3D. And I don't do it this way. I do it the way I've done it in my my building, where I would separate that out. That mesh that you're using for the glass, I would you're using material IDs, and this is what's confusing me. You're saying you're using material IDs, which means you'll have a material ID for the door, a material ID for the glass, and I'm assuming maybe a separate material ID for the handle. And you're saying you have the opacity in the alpha of the base color, okay? But just clarify for me here with this door. You're using material ID, so basically you have well, before you don't have to separate the mesh, and I don't want to give you guys I don't want to tell you to do it a certain way if you're not. You don't have to. So I'm assuming here you've got either 2 or at least 3 materials. I'm assuming if the doorknob is a separate material, it doesn't have to be, but it looks like it may be. So you have 3 materials, and you're using the opacity in the alpha of the base color for your glass. You don't have to separate the mesh. If you're doing multi-material ID, you don't have to. And separating the mesh will add an extra draw call. So I don't want to suggest that to you guys if you don't have to do it, because you are going to increase your draw call by separating the mesh, because it's going to be loading a separate object in. You're only going to be adding 1 draw call, by the way, which is not huge, unless you use the door 1,000 times. So he has 1 model, 3 material IDs, 3 materials, and he's using the alpha in the color map for the opacity on his glass, which is affecting the other material, which is very strange. Yeah, like I said, hang on, we've got more down here. Sorry, I didn't see this. Alright, so you have your normal map. You're using the... Okay, it may be something to do with your ambient occlusion. Yeah, I bet you it's to do with your ambient occlusion. I see you're using ambient occlusion here, and my first guess looking at your material will be that problem is ambient occlusion. Try disconnecting your ambient occlusion just as a test and see if that problem is still there. That's the first thing I'd do. Aside from that, that's the door frame. I'd still disconnect it from the door frame and check. Yeah, I'm just reading your little comments here. This is without translucent, and this is with, and this is without. With translucent, and you're talking about around the edges here, aren't you? That looks like ambient occlusion to me, because it's in the corners of the door. My first guess would be ambient occlusion. And as a test, what I want you to do is I want you to remove the ambient occlusion. Just break the link, don't delete the texture. Break the link to ambient occlusion, and tell me if that problem goes away. Okay. That is my first guess there, looking at the material shader. And because it's actually in the corners of the door, which is generally where ambient occlusion will gather. So do that first. Break the ambient occlusion link and check the door and see if it's still a problem. And if it is, then we can go from there. But I think it may be a problem with the ambient occlusion map. And this is how it looks in Substance. Yeah. Yeah, I see what's going on there. And that's a very nice door too, by the way. Nice texturing. Really nice. The other thing you've got to be aware of too with some of these maps is not doing it this way. And this is the proper way to do it. The way I show you guys, I've done this in this level a few times as well. Use one texture map for your different channels because that'll save texture memory the most. At the moment though, I generally save out the different texture maps individually, which is not the best way to do it. This is the best way to do it, where you put them all in different, your red, green and blue channel. But doing it this way, you've got to make sure that you do hook up the right channel to the right slot. So you can get yourself into a bit of confusion if you're not careful here. And I just want to make sure that you are using the right channel for ambient occlusion. Let's just jump back into my materials. It's still there. You tried disconnecting the ambient. So you disconnected your ambient occlusion and the problem is still there, all right? And this is what I mean by using one material for the three different metallic, roughness and ambient occlusion can get a bit confusing. The other thing I would check is to make sure that, so you're hooking up your metallic, your roughness and your ambient occlusion, right? Just let me look at my materials here and find one where I'm using the same sort of material that where I'm using one texture into different channels. See, I tend to separate them out, which is not the best way, not the best way, but the least confusing way. But I did do it your way as well in a few of these, if I can just find them. No. Nope. I wonder if it was... Okay. So you are right, you've got your red going into your ambient occlusion, you've got your green going into your metallic and the blue into the roughness. Let's just double check that again. Okay, it's hard for me to make out here. It looks like you're okay. It looks like you've got your blue going into your roughness and your green going into your metallic. Just double check that for me as well. So long as your blue is going into your metallic and your green is going into your roughness, then you've got your channels right. And Canu says he removed the ambient occlusion and it's still there. Alright, so it's not the ambient occlusion. And this only happens when you set translucent to this material, yeah? Yeah, red is ambient, green is roughness, blue is metallic. Okay, cool. Just pays to check these things because sometimes, and it can be easy to make a mistake when you're pulling them out of that one material. Sorry, my phone's just going off here, guys. There we go. So they're hooked up correctly, but you're only getting this problem, you're saying, when you put translucency on the glass material for the door. With translucent, without translucent. Just trying to work out what the problem is here. Yep, okay. With translucent, without. Okay, now you're saying it's messing up the edges here. I think this is what I'm looking at. If I look at this door, I'm just trying to look at the difference between the two. Is it the edging here that you're talking about now? See, that edge there looks straight to me. But here with the translucent, I see that there's a bit of a kink going on here. I just want to make sure I'm looking for at the right problem that you're talking about. See, I initially assumed you were talking about the edging here. It looks very light grey here, but when you take translucency off, it brings it back to being black. You're saying, I guess I have opacity and alpha of base color, and the shader is making the whole mesh translucent. You have opacity in the alpha of the base color, and the shader is making the whole mesh translucent. Okay. Yeah, and that could be, like I said, if it wasn't the ambient occlusion, the first thing I said was the alpha mask could be a problem. Yeah, so check the alpha check the alpha map. You should be able to load up whatever paint program you're using. Like if you're using Photoshop, load it up into that and check the alpha. Make sure that there's no problem in the alpha map. Because if there's a problem in the alpha map, then that will affect the translucency on the rest of the door. So yeah, check the alpha map. I'd check that first. So load that up and let me know how that looks. Let's bring in, where am I? Materials, effects, this is where we are. And it may even be, again, putting the alpha in the base color is the best way to go to save on memory. But it may pay just to save out the alpha map as its own texture and check it that way first. And see if you can get an idea from that what the problem is. Now again, I want to materials building parallax map, that's what it's called. So material building. Okay, it's this one here. I'm going to duplicate this material. Call this one main room parallax. Like I said, I don't know if we're going to be able to use parallax mapping for that texture, but we will certainly find out. So I'm just waiting for the engine to recompile the shader. Yeah, that's what I'd do too, Canu. I'd save out the alpha map, the opacity as a separate texture and bring it in that way and test it to see if there's a problem. And then if that's not a problem, then you know that there's some sort of problem. Or if there's still a problem that way, then it's probably a problem with the alpha map itself, the opacity map. Okay, let's open up this copy we just made. And jump back into the materials we just imported. And let's import the normal map and the ambient occlusion. So we want ambient occlusion, we want the height map, and we want the normal map. I'm going to swap out the texture map. The normal map, the ambient occlusion map, and in the height map. And again, I've just got to wait for Unreal to compile that. There we go. Alright, let's save that. Come on, Unreal, save. Okay. I'm going to keep that open. I'm going to open up the mesh, and I'm going to jump back into our materials here where we made that copy, that duplicate of the material. What do we call it? I think it's this one here. No, it's not that one. Main room parallax map, this one. Let's drag that into over our material and check it out. See if parallax will work for this asset. It probably will. Yeah, I think we can use parallax mapping on this. It should be okay. We will place it in the level to make sure, though. It's easier to see inside the level than in the browser here. So let's save that. Yes, I have heard of decal, Sniper Echo. A deferred decal. Deferred decal. No, I'm familiar with decals. I'm not sure about deferred decal. Do you know about it? Do you know what is it? Is it something new that they're adding into the engine, or has it been there for a while? It's not sure what deferred decal, what they're meaning by that. Because decals can be really useful to use as well. Less so now. They used to be very big years ago. Blood splatter on walls and floors, all that sort of thing was generally done with a decal. Alright, so we've saved that out. Let's bring it into the level and have a look. You're not 100% sure what the difference is, to be honest. Yeah, neither am I. We know what a decal is. We know what it's used for in a level. Deferred decal. I don't know what they would mean by deferred. Why would you defer a decal? Unless it's some effects-based decal that they're going for. No, I'm not familiar with it. Is it something new to Unreal? Is it for the Unreal Engine? I'll look it up after the stream, because it's something I'm interested in. Again, like I said, decals were very big years ago. Used less so now because they tend to do stuff more with particles. Actual particles instead of faking it with the decal. I know decals can be used quite a bit for lighting. Yeah, for throwing projections of lighting and things as well. Okay, let's pull one of these pieces in so we can see it actually in the level. But no, I'd be interested to find out, and I will look it up if it's specific to Unreal. I'll certainly check it out. Let's rotate it 180 degrees because the back side is flat. We've only got definition happening here on the front side. Let's move it up. Now we are going to have to scale it up. I'm going to just jump back into Max and look at my demo here that I created so I could check how many I needed and what size. So we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 along the width, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 along the length, so 5 by 5. No deferred decals apparently don't work so well in UE4, but does work in Unity. Oh, okay. There's a plugin you were going to purchase for Blender that speeds up the workflow. Okay. I thought you were using UE4 Sniper Echo, using Unity. Unity is a great engine too. I'm not suggesting it's not. I thought you were doing stuff in UE4. But if it doesn't work well in UE4, but it's still available, I'm willing to check it out. No, you're using UE4? Okay. But you're curious about it for UE4 because they use it in Unity, I'm assuming. I'll look into it after the stream. I'll have a read up and see what I can find out about deferred decal, because it's new to me. I know decals, I don't know deferred decals, that's a new one. Oh, they work in Unity but not in UE4. Okay. I'll have a look. I'll read up on deferred decals. I want to see what they're doing, what they mean by them, what they're using them for. Like, I can't see, unless it's some specific use case, why you would want a deferred decal. I'll check it out though. Again though, decals they're not something, they're still used, and that's why they're in the engines, but they're not as big as they used to be because they're not as necessary as they used to be. Game engines have gotten a lot more powerful now. You don't generally use decals much anymore. But I'll look into it. I'm curious. You've got me curious about it now too. I'm going to duplicate this because we need a 5x5. So let me get up here. I might put grid snapping on here so I can get these to line up properly. I'm going to take the snapping back though to maybe 5. No, let's take it all the way back to 1. Yeah, dude. No, certainly, yeah. Send me a YouTube link for sure, and I'll check it out after the stream. I'm curious to see what they're doing, what they mean, what they're using them for, what use they are now. So yeah, do send me a link. I'd love to check it out. You guys know I'm always interested in anything new that's happening, anything different or new that's going on in the world of design in 3D. Let's duplicate it again. I generally turn off this snapping features because I find it annoying, but I don't suggest you do it unless you need to, because it can be very useful to get things to line up properly without having to muck around too much. Like I said, I just like to, I generally turn it off because I like to have a bit more freedom in my movement, but it's not wise to turn it off. You'll find your life much easier keeping snapping turned on. Alright, so we have our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we need to get the size correct, and again, we wouldn't have this problem if I didn't originally scale up my building from the original in max. Because I scaled the building up, I have to rescale my assets now as well. So I'm going to select them. What did I do here? Let's do it in the browser, it's much easier. What have I done? I don't want that one. Main ceiling squares, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, cool. I'm going to uniformly scale these now until they meet the curtains on either side. Again, doing it in the top viewport It's probably easier, but a lot more boring for you guys to watch. So